He carried plates and glasses through a glittering hall, moving quietly among people who barely saw him. To them, he was invisible, just another black waiter serving the wealthy. But what no one knew was that beneath the uniform was a man with a secret that would shake the room. In one instant, a single word spoken in a foreign tongue exposed more than just his skill. It revealed truths about respect, prejudice, and power. And when the billionaire at the corner table realized what he had witnessed, he left something behind that no one expected. The question is, why? It was supposed to be just another shift, the kind of evening that blurred into dozens before it. Long hours of quiet service, moving between tables stacked with silver cutlery and fine wine. For most guests, the luxury of the room was the point. Chandeliers casting golden light, glasses clinking, voices rising in laughter. But for him, it was work. His name was Daniel, a young man who had learned early that respect didn't always come with hard work. Born into a family that struggled to make ends meet, Daniel carried with him, more than just trays, he carried responsibility. He worked double shifts, saving every coin for his younger sister's education, determined to give her the chance he never had. To the wealthy clients, he was just a quiet shadow moving between their conversations, someone they didn't have to see. Yet behind his steady hands was a sharp mind, one that spoke more languages than most of the guests at those glittering tables. Still, in this world, none of that seemed to matter. The uniform erased his story. The skin he was born into determined the way people looked, or failed to look, at him. And on this night, as the dining room filled with even louder voices and sharper eyes, Daniel felt the weight of their dismissive glances more heavily than usual. He didn't know it yet, but before the night ended, the very thing he kept hidden, the gift no one expected, would draw all eyes toward him. And not everyone in that room would know how to handle it. The night had started like any other. Daniel moved quietly through the dining hall, his steps measured, his presence unnoticed. But as the tables filled with powerful men and women, he could feel it, the weight of eyes on him. Not in admiration, not in curiosity, but in that cold, dismissive way he had grown used to. To them, he was background, a servant in black skin, moving silently to keep their world running smoothly. At first, it was small things. A guest waving him over with a snap of fingers, not even bothering to look at his face. Another rolling her eyes when he politely repeated her order. Their voices dripped with impatience, as though he should have read their minds before they spoke. Daniel had mastered the art of swallowing pride, of smiling when it hurt, but every slight left a quiet bruise, and tonight the cuts seemed sharper. Then came the louder insult, one not even whispered. At the corner table, a group of men laughed carelessly, their words slicing through the room. One of them, a man with a heavy watch and louder voice, said just loud enough for Daniel to hear, "You'd think in a place like this they'd hire staff who can at least keep up." The laughter that followed wasn't just noise. It was a reminder of where they thought he belonged. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest, but he kept moving. Plates balanced, glasses filled, hands steady. Yet the humiliation clung to him like smoke. For a moment, he considered walking out, just leaving the job behind. But he couldn't. His sister's tuition depended on him. His family depended on him. So he stayed, silent, as the laughter echoed behind him. But fate has a way of bending ordinary nights into moments no one expects. As Daniel cleared another table, a guest stumbled over a word on a German wine label. The man laughed awkwardly, muttering something clumsy, and his companions chuckled at his failed attempt. That was when Daniel, without even thinking, quietly corrected the pronunciation under his breath. The sound of his voice in that language, fluent, precise, unmistakably confident, hung in the air. For a second, the table went silent. Then came more laughter. Not impressed, not curious. Mocking. "Well, look at that," one man sneered. "The waiter thinks he's a scholar now." The words stung, sharper than the earlier ones. The group leaned in, smirking, testing him. "Say something." "Else," one demanded. "Go on, show us." It wasn't a request. It was a performance they expected. Daniel hesitated, heart pounding. He wasn't there to entertain. Yet the moment felt dangerous. If he refused, they would laugh louder. If he played along, they would twist it into another joke. His silence became its own answer, and their ridicule grew heavier. What Daniel didn't realize was that not everyone in the room was laughing. At a table tucked near the edge of the hall, a billionaire guest, quiet, watchful, had been observing every moment. And what he was about to do would turn this ordinary night into something unforgettable. The laughter grew crueler, echoing in Daniel's ears like a drumbeat he couldn't silence. Every word cut deeper, each smirk reminding him of the cage others built for him. He stood frozen for a breath, tray balanced in his hands, heart hammering in his chest. For years, he had endured the quiet insults, the condescending looks. But this was different. This was a public stripping of his dignity. Then came the breaking point. One of the men leaned back in his chair, wine glass in hand, and said loudly enough for the whole hall to hear, "No matter how many languages you speak, you'll always just be the help." The table roared with laughter, their cruelty washing over him like a wave. Heads turned. Strangers watched. In that moment, Daniel felt the full weight of what it meant to be judged not by his knowledge, not by his worth, but by the color of his skin and the uniform he wore. For a split second, he thought about shouting back, to tell them who he really was, the life he had lived, the battles he had fought. But the words caught in his throat. He knew the danger of speaking up in a room that had already decided his place. Silence can feel louder than screams. And as Daniel lowered his eyes and turned away, a sickening heat spread through his chest, the humiliation of being crushed in front of those who thought they owned the world. But in the corner, unseen by most, the billionaire leaned forward. His eyes, sharp and unblinking, were fixed not on the men who laughed, but on the young waiter who had endured it all. He saw something the others could not, and with one quiet decision, he would change everything that followed. Because sometimes, the real power in a room doesn't come from the loudest voice, but from the one preparing to act. When the night ended and the last of the guests drifted away, Daniel returned to the corner table to clear what remained. But instead of silence and empty glasses, he found something unexpected, a folded note tucked neatly under a plate, held down by a ticket. The handwriting was firm, deliberate. It read, "Respect is the only true wealth. You have more of it than anyone here tonight." Attached to it was a tip larger than Daniel had ever seen in his life. The billionaire had left without applause, without spectacle, but his gesture carried more weight than the laughter that had filled the hall. For Daniel, it wasn't just about the money. It was validation. Proof that someone had seen him for who he was, not for the role society tried to force him into. For the first time that night, he felt the humiliation lift, replaced by something else, strength. But the deeper truth was harder to escape. For every Daniel who is recognized, how many more go unseen? How many are silenced, dismissed, or broken under the same cruel weight of prejudice? The note was a spark, but sparks alone cannot burn down centuries of injustice. This story is not just about one waiter, one insult, or one act of kindness. It's about the system that still teaches some to believe they are greater, and others to believe they are less. And it's about the power of small choices, the words we speak, the way we look at each other, the humanity we choose to recognize or ignore. So the question remains, when you see injustice, will you stay silent like the crowd, Or will you be the one who chooses to act?